Who is the actor? Chapter 8, A Deeper Dive. Acting is not about dressing up. Acting is about stripping bare. The whole essence of learning lines is to forget them, so you can make them sound like you thought of them that instant. Glenda Jackson. Hi, I'm Lisa Bone. I'm an actor, a director, and a theater educator. I've been teaching theater on the college and university level since 2004. And I'm going to take a deeper dive into how actors do what they do. So let's take a look. What is acting? Actors are the most easily recognizable members of the creative team. They are the ones that are up there on stage, performing, developing that connection with the audience. But a lot of times acting is not really understood at its true nature by the audience. It might seem kind of easy sometimes. You know what? You memorize some lines and you get up on stage and you say them. But it's a lot more complicated and a lot more challenging than most people realize. And it can be really tricky to define, right? It's more than just pretending to be someone else. Because pretending inherently, that word pretend, makes it seem like it's something that's not real, that it's fake. And if it's fake, then the audience isn't going to believe it. So let's look at what is the best working definition of acting. And this is from a theater practitioner in the early to mid 1900s named Sanford Meisner. And he described acting as truthful action in imaginary circumstances. Truthful action in imaginary circumstances. So let's unpack that just a little bit, okay? So why is it important that the action is truthful? Well, if the action isn't truthful, if you don't believe what the actor is doing, then it disconnects you from the story, right? So the actor has to be believable in order for you to really buy in as an audience member. And why do we use the word action? Well, the word drama comes from the Greek word dran, D-R-A-N, meaning to do. And that allows us to look at theater as something that is done. It's an action, right? So a lot of times people might think of acting as being, well, it's about your emotions. You know, I'm going to cry at this part. I'm going to yell at him because I'm angry on this line. But that doesn't give the actor something to do, right? If I just sit there and say, I'm going to be really sad right now, then I'm concentrating on this feeling of being sad rather than what I am doing to the other person that I'm on the stage with or what I need from that other person, right? So we use the word action because it allows the actors to do something and really dig their claws into it, right? Get into the meat of it. So for instance, rather than thinking of, I'm angry on this line, you can think of it as, I want to punish that person, right? And automatically that has something that's that is stronger, right? It's stronger than saying, I'm angry. You can say, I'm going to punish him, right? So we look at action. Okay. And then what are the imaginary circumstances? If we're talking about truthful action and imaginary circumstances, well, the imaginary circumstances are the world of the play. And we'll dig into that a little bit more later. But this is the, how the fact of like where you are and what time period it is and your gender within that time period and all of those things really come into play in terms of how these characters fit within that world. So truthful action in imaginary circumstances. So let's look at how an actor does what they do, how an actor acts. So there are 4 key things that every actor has to be able to identify with every character that they're playing. And those are the character's objectives. That's what does the character want? Okay? Tactics are what the character does to get what they want. So how they achieve their objective. There's also the obstacles, what gets in that character's way of achieving their objective. And then the last part is looking at the world of the play, and that's the given circumstances that we talked about before. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these. Let's take a closer look at the character's objective, which is, again, what that character wants. Okay. Now, if you really think about it, we are all driven by wants and needs, and some of them are really basic and small. I want to eat breakfast, right? I kind of do want to eat breakfast. So, but it also is the big things like I want to be happy in my life, or we're going to work with this example. I want to be a doctor. Okay. So if I want to be a doctor, then that has other wants and needs that are kind of built underneath it. Okay. If I want to be a doctor, then that means that I want to go to medical school. And if I want to go to medical school, then I want to graduate from A-State with a 3.8 or higher. If I want to graduate from A-State with a 3.8 or higher, then that means that I need to get a good grade in my fine arts theater class, and so on. Okay. So we are all driven by those wants and needs. And in acting, those wants and needs are called objectives. And this gives us a really tangible way to look at things. And actors have to go through and figure out what those characters' objectives are. They have to figure out, what does my character want in this particular scene? What do I want from that person that I'm talking to? You know, what do I need from that person that I'm talking to? And we always phrase it as I want, or sometimes I need, because again, that gives us a really concrete goal to work towards. And trying to figure out how long you stick with an objective. Really, you stick with it either until you achieve that objective, woohoo, and you move on to the next one. Or you determine that the obstacles are too big and you're not ever really going to make it happen. So you give up on that objective and move on to a different one. Okay, so let's look at the example of I want $5 to get a foot-long sandwich from Subway. So let's work with that example. So let's look at tactics. So tactics are how you get what you want, what you do to achieve that objective. So if I want $5 to get a foot-long sandwich from Subway, one of my tactics could be just to ask, would you please give me $5 so I can get a foot-long sandwich from Subway? But here's the thing. You say no. Thanks. You say no, okay? But I'm not ready to give up on that objective. So I tried just straight up asking, will you give me $5? You said no. I still want that $5 to get my foot-long from Subway. So I'm going to try a different way to approach it. I'm going to try a different tactic. So there's different ways that I might try this. So for instance, I might beg, please, 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 you don't understand. I'm so hungry. Please, I am begging you to give me $5. I could try threatening you. I could say, if you don't give me $5, I'm going to give you an F in fine arts theater. That could go the other way too. I could entice you. I could say, if you give me $5, I'll give you an A in fine arts theater. I could make you feel guilty. Remember that one time when I bought you coffee at Subway? Well, maybe you could give me $5 for a foot-long from Subway. I could also bargain with you. So I could say, I'll wash your car if you give me $5 for a foot-long from Subway. I could appeal to your emotions. I could say, please, my baby needs his medicine. I need $5 to get medicine for my baby. I could really try to appeal to your emotions. But with each tactic, with each of those tactics, beg, threaten, entice, make you feel guilty, appeal to your emotions, all of those, there are things that get in the way, potentially, of those working. So let's take a look at what those are. So let's talk obstacles. If you remember, obstacles are the things that get in the way of a character being able to achieve their objective, right? And this could be anything. Let's look at our $5 ask. If I begged you, please, please, I'm begging you, please give me $5. One of the obstacles might be your cold, dead heart. So maybe that's one of the problems, is that you're just like, don't care, sorry. If I threaten you, right? If you don't give me $5, I'm going to give you an F in this class. Well, one of the obstacles to that is that I know that if I do that, I could get fired from my job. We don't want that. The same thing works for entice. If I say, I'll give you an A in this class if you give me $5, I could also lose my job. So that's another pretty big obstacle. If I try to make you feel guilty, don't forget, I bought you that coffee that one time. It could be your cold, dead heart again, coming back and saying, Yeah, thanks for the coffee. Still not going to give you $5. Okay. Bargaining. If you give me $5, I'll wash your car. Well, the obstacle could be you don't have a car. Or the obstacle to me could be you don't care if your car's dirty. So that wouldn't work as a tactic, right? You see how that's an obstacle? The appeal to your emotions. Please, my poor baby needs medicine. Please give me $5 for medicine. I come back again to your cold, dead heart. So those are all things that get in the way of achieving an objective. And objectives and tactics are affected by given circumstances. So let's take a look at given circumstances. So, given circumstances, these are the 5 W's. This is the world of the play, right? So, we've got our who, what, when, where, and why for our given circumstances. So, the who, it could be I'm the King of Scotland, or I am a poor girl growing up in rural Louisiana, or I am the Prince of Denmark, or, any of these things. So, who you are makes a big difference. The when, if you think about the when, this is like if it's 2021 or 1952 or 1867 or 1703. If you think about all those different time periods, the world was vastly different for each of those time periods. And think about things like the role of gender, right? 2021, gender roles are viewed very, very differently than they were in 1952 or 1867 or 1703, any of those. So the who and the what and the when, the where. Is it up north in Boston and it's winter? That's going to make a big, huge difference than if it's the winter and it's Florida, So the weather plays a difference. Is it cold? Is it hot? Has there been a famine? Has there been a big dust bowl? All of that stuff plays a role in it as well. And so time period and who you are and where you are, all those things play a big difference in terms of how you establish your objectives, how you figure out what your tactics are, and what those obstacles might be. It's going to vary depending on that. So let's look at our $5 ask, right? So I want $5 to buy a footlong at Subway, okay? And I try asking you for it, and one of the given circumstances that plays a big role is that you don't have $5. Okay, well, I very quickly abandon that objective and move on to another one. I'm not going to sit there and say, please, I'm begging you, but I don't have $5. I'm going to threaten you. I still don't have $5. I am enticing you. I still don't have $5, right? I would give up a lot sooner if you don't have $5. So that given circumstance is a big deal. Another given circumstance that could play a role in this is what if you're failing the class? Okay, if you're failing the class, then the threat for me to fail you doesn't mean as much as if you were getting an A in the class and I threatened to fail you. Right? Another one would be, what if you're a first-generation college student? You're the first person in your family to go to college. There's a lot of pressure on you to do well. So if I say, I'll give you an A if you give me $5, you might think about that differently than if you were the 7th in a long line of people to go to college. A big one is that you don't really know me, or you don't know me at all, right? You're going to be a lot less inclined to give me $5 than your best friend if your best friend was asking you for $5. The fact that we've got this teacher-student dynamic, that plays into that obstacle that I was talking about. The fact that I'm the teacher and you're the student, that would play a big role because, again, that means that there's that power dynamic inherently built into that, and that can affect the objectives and the tactics and the obstacles for sure. There's a pandemic. That could possibly do it. So maybe you don't have $5 to spare because you lost your part-time job because of the pandemic, right? So all of those things play a big deal, including the fact that I live in North Carolina and you live in Arkansas. So it's going to be a lot harder for us to deal with getting $5 to me because I don't even live in the same state. So think about given circumstances for Romeo and Juliet. It would be a very, very different play if the Montagues and the Capulets weren't at war with each other. If Romeo said, "Hey, Juliet, I think you're cool," and she said, "Hey, I think you're cool too," and the parents said, "Hey, we think y'all are both cool. Let's get married. Awesome." It would be a very, very different play, right? But the fact that the Montagues and the Capulets are at war with each other is the most important given circumstance to that play. Do you see how that works? Okay. So how do we know when it's time to move on to a new objective? Well, it's really one of two things. Either you achieve your objective and woohoo, and you're ready to move on to the next one, or you perceive that the obstacles were too great and it was never going to happen. So you move on to the next one, right? So it's either I got you to give me $5, woohoo, and my next objective is now I want you to give me a ride to Subway. All right, so I moved from I want $5 to get a foot long at Subway, tactic, tactic, obstacle, obstacle, tactic, tactic, woohoo, achieved my objective, next objective, to get you to give me a ride to Subway. Or I want you to give me $5 for a foot long at Subway, and it's no, 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 no. And I say, okay, never mind. Do you have any Doritos? That might be my next one is I want you to give me Doritos or something like that, right? So that's how we figure out is when you move on to the next one, either you got it or you didn't, and you move on. And so I gave that example. I got my $5, so now I want to ride to Subway. And the whole process starts over again, right? So then you look at the next sort of chunk of text, right? And you look and you say, okay, I got my $5. So now I want to get her to give me a ride to Subway. And you start looking at tactics and obstacles for that. And really, that's kind of what acting is, right? So when actors read a play, they have to look for clues that will help them figure out what those objectives are, what the given circumstances are, what the tactics are, what the obstacles are. So when they read a play, they're looking at those given circumstances, the who, what, when, where, why. They're looking at time period and who they are and class and status and all of those things. They're looking at what the character says, right? But then they're also looking at what the character does because the character could say, I hate you and I never want to see you again. But really what they do is they end up pursuing that person. So we know that what they said is not necessarily really how they feel. So you have to look at what the character says, but you also have to look at what the character does. You also want to look at what other characters say about them, because that's really telling, especially if that character's not in the room. What do other characters say about your character when you're not there? And then you determine the objectives and the tactics and the obstacles. And that's how you work your way through a play, is objective to objective to objective. And remember, it all has to come back down to truthful action in imaginary circumstances. And we get that with objectives, tactics, obstacles, and given circumstances. That's a deeper dive into acting. Thanks.